This is the Chancellor's Report from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. Featuring Mark Money, Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And here's your host, WUWM General Manager David Lee.
Hi, thank you for joining us on the UWM Chancellor's Report here on 89.7 WUWM. I'm David Lee, General Manager of the station, and I'm here today with UWM Chancellor Mark Money. Hi, Mark.
Hi, David.
Our guests today are Peggy Williams-Smith, President and CEO of Visit Milwaukee, and Mordecai Lee, Emeritus Professor of Political Science at UWM. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We are so excited to have you all on because around this time last year, we had Peggy and the mayor and county executive to talk about what it took to bring the RNC to Milwaukee. And now that the convention is literally weeks away, we're excited to have you back and to have Dr. Lee back to talk about the potential economic impact and the role of higher education in bringing this big party, to this big convention to our city. So first, I mean, I think the person who might be a little bit on the outside of this table, rare that happens. Mark, the role of higher education, what role do you see UWM playing in the broader kind of community conversation surrounding the convention and its impact on the city?
Well, thanks for the question, David. And I am just so thrilled, first of all, to have Peggy Williams-Smith and Mordecai Lee here. They're just such great experts in their respective areas. And so to hear from them, it's going to be a real treat for our listeners today. As far as the impact and the role of the university, at least a few different areas. Number one, opportunities for our students to be runners, to be observers, to engage in different ways. If you're in political science, if you're in marketing, if you're in communications, journalism, you've got this great front door. Same thing with the faculty, same type of engagement. So then that leads to another area. Professor Lee, Emeritus, is able to talk and use and draw from his expertise. But also I think it's fair to say we all learn. We're all students as we see the world of democracy unfold. So that's a couple of different areas. The other aspect of this is the facilities that we provide for whether it's convention goers or some of the roles that our folks play, some of the staff. We've been having planning meetings weekly throughout the year in terms of how we're engaged and try to support this major visibility for our city, and it brings us all up.
Dr. Lee, former senator, former assemblyperson, and former volunteer at WUWM.
Can we go with Mordecai? I'm not a doctor, and it looks like you're not sick. So, this is such a unique opportunity because all of us who have gone through the educational system, we're used to the term lab. Here's a lab for this, and here's a lab for that. I'm in the social sciences. We don't get to have labs. If you're in physics, you have a lab. If you're in chemistry, you have a lab. If you're in nursing, you have a lab. But here we are, we've got a real live lab for students at UWM who are interested in the social sciences, whether it might be, as the Chancellor mentioned, some of those areas, but particularly in political science, urban planning, urban history, urban studies. The chance to be in it, the chance to be there instead of watching it on TV as some remote event, and the opportunities for participation are just extraordinary. They might be just observing. They might be playing a role. I imagine that there are UWM students who have volunteered, who went through the volunteering process and are going to be able to go into that hard secure area, not just the soft secure area. So this kind of education, the doing, the feeling, the being there is just extraordinary.
That's really incredible. Now, shifting a little bit from the academic to the economic, Peggy, could you describe some of the economic benefits of having the RNC here in Milwaukee?
Well, I mean, there's direct spending, of course. That's the money that's going to change hands from everyone who's coming in to the different types of businesses. There's job creation. The RNC moved in about 18 months ago. They have 50 people who are living here and working here, renting apartments, eating out in our restaurants, having babies, getting married, getting engaged, all here in Milwaukee, as well as what the host committee has brought in terms of jobs as well. There's also tax revenue and then long-term investment. I know AT&T has been here upgrading all of the Wi-Fi throughout the city. Those are things that wouldn't have happened if we were not hosting the RNC.
If you're going to put on a show like this, right, there's just the impacts sort of go beyond just sort of the impacts of the day or surrounding, right? Just there's so much engagement.
So much engagement.
Mordecai, from a historical perspective, you sort of just talked a little bit, about the kind of like practical perspective, right? But from a historical perspective, what role have higher education institutions played in political conventions?
Well, it's inevitable that the educational process contributes to American politics.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a real standard procedure that the news media uses when it comes to higher education and politics, because the news media is always looking for nonpartisan observers of public affairs. If a reporter wants to hear from a Democrat, they've got a long list, and they want to hear from a Republican, they have a long list. But often a reporter wants to talk to somebody who does not have a partisan bias and who can comment on the educational importance, the political importance of some event from a nonpartisan point of view. And that's where I think our chancellor's office serves an enormous kind of role. I got a call from a TV reporter a couple of weeks ago. She wanted to talk about something that had to do with the news. And I said, I'm not the guy. I know what you're talking about. I read about it in the paper, but I'm not a specialist in that. I can't comment on it. And she said, well, who can I call? I said, call the media relations office of UWM. She did. And she got a professor in the library school. Now it's called the Information Studies School, I think, who was just absolutely perfect. And so here was an opportunity for UWM or any other educational institution to play this really contributing role in terms of these political events.
I mean, it sounds like it's really like the ability to be able to provide surrounding context, right, to the things that are happening in our community.
And you've really nailed it, because I meet so many people, whether it's in the grocery store, wherever it might be, who are so sick of politics. They're so sick of the one-sided, divisive, sort of cover your ears and just talk. No interaction, no conversation, no moderateness, no compromise. And I think that what professors offer is that sort of step away and to talk about something from a content point of view and from a rationality point of view.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd argue that that's the role of the university, is to provide that open forum and to provide that objective view that really does listen to both sides and provide critiques. And that's the advantage of I believe, any public or private educational institution, but particularly in a city like Milwaukee, to have that table, that place where people can go and hear and learn, frankly, a lot. And that's critical to our democracy, to be able to have those diverse perspectives and be able to really learn and hear other views.
Peggy, turning over to you.
Yes.
I don't think I'm speaking out of school to say that you've had a pretty good few years from a big show standpoint. How is Visit Milwaukee leveraging this opportunity specifically, and maybe even in the context of all of the other things that have happened, to enhance Milwaukee's image and to attract future visitors?
I mean, we get to tell the story of everyone here. We get to tell everyone we have 11 colleges and universities. We get to show everyone our amazing culinary scene. We get to showcase all of our local attractions, collaboration with local businesses, speaking directly to the media through not just our media table that will be right in the filing center over at the Baird Center, but also media bags that we're putting together in conjunction with other major companies that have our official visitors guide, our official map, QR codes to all of the great places they can go while they're here, so that we can showcase all of those businesses, engaging local volunteers and ambassadors on behalf of Milwaukee. We were very instrumental in making sure we were pushing out the option or all of the different opportunities for people to get involved in this convention, even if they didn't want to get involved politically. It could be at the airport. It could be in Madison. It could be in Brookfield. It could be at a hotel welcoming guests and answering questions. And then, as we look at it, we are using some different data companies to fence in the area so we can see where people are going, so we can see everything. How many visitors came into the airport? Where did they go from the airport? Where did they go from the convention center? Were they at Convention Fest? If you leave your phone on, we can track all of that.
So I have to piggyback on this just for a moment, because when you talk and ask Peggy about leveraging how does Visit Milwaukee do this and how does the city? She not only has been able to leverage, but she's also helped set the stage. David, it wasn't that long ago that we had Peggy and former chef, now co-owner Paul Bartolotta, talking about the work of bringing Top Chef to Milwaukee and putting us on the map. But that sets the stage, and all of this work is cumulative. We wouldn't have the RNC following the DNC if it weren't for a lot of the things that Peggy has really built. So it's been a good year, but we owe a great debt to you, Peggy. And I know you don't do it alone. You've got a great team. But I'll tell you, you've taken what was a superb city and turned it into just a place that's on the global stage today in a lot of different ways. How many cruise ships come to Milwaukee? Cruise ships.
31 last year. 31.
This is it's just amazing. There's so many things, and you just tick them off so well. And a great ambassador for us. So this is just another feather in your cap.
Well, thank you. And it's really about telling the stories. And I think telling the stories, not just the team had always told the stories outside of Milwaukee, but we need to tell the stories inside of Milwaukee so that everyone knows all the great things that are happening here. So our job is really to tell stories. Yep. And I'm fortunate that I have a great team who is really good at storytelling all of the great things that are happening.
I mean, I think even like we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but like even taking advantage of maybe some of the unique opportunities that might come up given some of the commentary that might be made by some of the candidates, right?
Right.
Like you'd mentioned how big of a bump that was or what an opportunity it was for you to be able to either tell that story or have other people sort of tell stories and amplify it.
100%. Other people telling those stories.
That's right.
That's always so much more authentic than us doing it ourselves. I know that 3 years ago, Stephen Colbert had said some pretty bad things about Milwaukee as well. And he was challenged pretty directly and pretty quickly. And he responded. And I had posted something on Facebook 3 years ago. And I came up in my memories and I shared it again, and everyone was like, oh my goodness. And when the comments were made about us being a horrible city, Colbert, Jon Stewart, everyone came to our defense. We didn't even have to do it. Yeah. It was from the outside.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great pivot point to looking at the political landscape, Mordecai. How might the choice of Milwaukee as the convention city reflect the Republican Party's strategic goals for 2024?
Well, there's no doubt that they're hoping that there's a bump.
Yeah.
Peggy talked about bumps in terms of economics. I think they're looking for a political bump. If 8 years ago the party lost Wisconsin in the presidential race by 21,000 votes, won Wisconsin by 21,000 votes, and 4 years ago lost Wisconsin by 21,000 votes, you've got to believe that they're thinking, our impact being here and having those volunteers and the families of those volunteers will lead to so much goodwill to the Republicans that maybe those people who maybe don't particularly like some aspect of Republican politics these days will still come home in November because of the goodwill that the convention will build. Now, I don't think that there's somebody out there saying, well, I always used to vote fill in the blank, Socialist, Green Party. But because the RNC was in Milwaukee, I'm going to vote Republican. No, that's not going to happen. But I'll tell you, those crossover voters in Wisconsin who sometimes vote for one major party and sometimes vote for another, they're authentically undecided, they're authentically independent. Who knows what might happen as a result of RNC being here? Who knows? They might be in a restaurant and they might be sitting at a table next to some RNC delegates. They might get into a conversation. It might open their eyes. They might become more open to voting for one party over the other. So I think it's just incredible that we in Wisconsin, we in Milwaukee are able to get the impact of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this thing about like hosting a party for 50 to plus thousand people that has to have some sort of impact, right? And so, Peggy, given the we talked about the economic impact, but thinking about some of the broader impacts and maybe some of the challenges that Milwaukee might face in hosting such a big party, what's the plan in addressing some of those things?
So we'll have, in conjunction with both the host committee and the COA, we had formed a communications committee 2.5 years ago when we first brought the event to Milwaukee. And they're going to be monitoring social media so that we can be of assistance to anyone who may choose to use social media to ask questions or to maybe, if they're not happy with something, to voice that. So we'll have people that will be doing that the entire time. Obviously, there's things we can control and there's things we can't. This is a major security event. Secret Service is really 100% in charge. They're the ones who will take care of any of those bigger challenges that we might face from a safety and security perspective. But we know that who we can get in contact with if we're seeing things online. And that's something that we really wanted to be a part of so that we can make sure it gets answered right away. Someone's lost. They don't know what time the hop is coming. They missed the bus from Madison to Milwaukee. How can we help?
Got it. Mark, how does the university plan to ensure the safety and well-being of its students and faculty during the convention? I know it's summertime, but people are typically around and maybe engaging.
Well,
in
that's the thing about campus like Milwaukee in an urban environment. Our students, our parents, our employees, alumni, they're largely here.
Yeah.
So it's not like some other campuses where, the day after graduation, everybody leaves. So we're part of this community in a big way. And just like Peggy described, the work that we're doing, on the one hand, is a subset, the same types of things that are happening at a large level, but we also contribute to that large level. So, for example, our police and many of our staff are going to be involved already in a lot of the facilities, a lot of the operation safety, and especially a lot of the communication. It's going to be so important to have the good communication in place. So we've been working on that and planning in a lot of different ways. We also, specific to our campus as part of the subset, we've got additional surveillance cameras. We're going to have 24/7 patrols. Keep in mind, there's the Milwaukee campus that's on the east side, but then we also have our Zilber College of Public Health right in the heart of downtown. Yeah. We've got our School of Freshwater Science. We've got facilities at Plankinton Avenue, right downtown. So we've got a lot of different facilities and operations that we're going to be continuing to make sure we lock buildings earlier than usual and have elevated security. We're also asking our employees to change modality for a little bit of the time before and after, and of course during. So classes go online and some of those types of things because of simply the traffic that we expect and anticipate. So we think that we've got a lot of the safeguards involved, and hope that we're just going to have something that is as positive and the ability for us to showcase this incredible city, all its features, and all the ways that we work together to put on a wonderful program, wonderful set of convention activities.
Now, David, you're lucky because the studios are on the other side
outside
of the river.
We're just outside.
Now, Mark was talking about UWM's facilities that are affected, and he mentioned the Plankinton building. That's where our School of Continuing Education is, and that's where my office is. And so we're very much affected by it. We're in the soft security zone. And like all Milwaukeeans, I've been following the news very carefully. Am I going to be able to drive to my parking lot? Am I going to be able to get into the building? And so far, everything looks like it's been well organized and a lot of information has been distributed.
I'm in the ASQ building, so I'm also in the soft perimeter, and I just keep telling my husband he has to clean my car. Otherwise, they're going to be searching for hours and find nothing but golf clubs and maybe some fast food.
Are we going to be able to walk over the skywalk?
I think so. I think we won't be as affected. I mean, there's going to be traffic interruptions. Yeah. Absolutely. There's going to be 350 buses coming in from all over the state, dropping off delegates throughout the day. But it'll be at off times, not during busy times. And I'm sure there'll be times when we can't go through skywalks. But for the most part, I think we will.
It's a weird thing at least for me, right? While our building is outside of the perimeter, we park on the inside of it. So,
really?
It'll be an interesting. We park in the Plankinton building, so we'll see how that goes. So shifting gears a little bit from the immediate impact of the event, Mordecai, what are some of the potential long-term impacts on the local political climate after hosting such a big event?
I've got to tell a story.
Yeah.
Last week, I participated in an MPS event that they've organized around the RNC. They invited some rising seniors and just graduating seniors if they wanted to be MPS ambassadors to the RNC, and that their role would be to help staff the concierge desks over at the two Marcus hotels. Yeah. And now imagine you're 16 years old, 17, maybe 18, maybe you get to vote this year. You haven't followed much about politics, but whoa, something is happening in Milwaukee. And so they had 25 kids apply. They had 15 kids who made it through the end of the training. And so the event that I moderated last week was with a lot of local elected officials. We had alders, we had state representatives, we had county supervisors, and the kids could ask us any question they wanted. Mm. After all, that's so different from the perception of politics that it's sort of out there.
Yeah.
And these kids really care about their future, and they care about things that affect them. And I mean, I've got to tell you, without being sappy, it was so inspirational that there are these 15 kids who are going to actively participate in the RNC. And I can tell you, this is going to affect how they feel about civics for the rest of their lives.
I also met with those kids, and I was also just overwhelmed. The day of the comment that came out, I was meeting with these kids, 15 of them, who were introduced not just to politics, but to hospitality and tourism for the first time. They asked so many great questions. We invited them to our annual meeting the following week. 5 of them came and now want to be in this business. They walked up to complete strangers, shook their hand and said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I was invited here by the president. What do you do in tourism?" So it was, you hope that stuff would happen, but I don't know. This event precipitated both of our experiences with that group of students from MPS.
Think about the ripple effects of that. Those kids that tell other kids and their parents, their families, us talking about it on the radio, what they're going to be doing as ambassadors. I mean, it's just powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we actually covered that event on our air, and I got to tell you, Mordecai, I wouldn't say that you're being sappy about it being inspirational. Like, I heard it and I was like, this is incredible. What an incredible program. Absolutely. So Peggy, one of the things that I ask our folks around here whenever we launch a new initiative, a new content initiative, is how will we know we're successful? Could you explain how you will know, or how Visit Milwaukee will know? How will we know that this was a success for our city from an economic impact standpoint, or from any sort of metrics that you might have?
Sure. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways that we're going to measure it. There will be reports, probably 2 different reports, one commissioned from the host committee, which happens after every major political convention, as well as one from us, but it's direct spending. It's hotel occupancy and revenue. We'll get that information pretty quickly the week after they leave. We'll look at job creation, tax revenue. Part of why we wanted the 2% here in the city and the additional money in the county was so that we could capture that additional money with the RNC coming in. Visitor volume. We'll also look at media, how many impressions, how many people talked about Milwaukee all over the world. So there's many different ways that we're going to measure it. And a full report probably comes out 6 months after the event, but we'll be able to give bits and pieces based on what we see from actual businesses.
That's really exciting.
The downside of this is that Milwaukee is about to be discovered. We've sort of lived in this nice cocoon. We love Milwaukee. We love the easy parking. We love the friendliness. But I think as a result of her work, we're going to be inundated for years to come with people who are impressed by what they see and hear over the next couple of weeks.
I have been sharing with friends of mine that I always get a little bit angry whenever I try to walk in to my favorite restaurant in town and they're like, "We can't seat you," or "I can't park like right in front of the thing that I'm trying to go to."
That's a Milwaukee thing. You have to see your car, otherwise it's not parked.
That's how you know. I guess I finally become a Milwaukeean, right? Like, I'm actually complaining about parking now. All right. So as we're drawing our time to a close, this has been such an incredible conversation. But we like to end our show by asking our guests to share something they've read or learned recently that they found particularly fun, interesting, or inspiring. Peggy, you have been you've heard this question before, so hopefully you're ready for it. Let's start with you this time.
So contrary to popular opinion, my job is more than RNC. So this weekend, I had the good fortune of being the keynote speaker at a convention that was in town. It was the 73rd National Square Dance Convention. Over 2,500 people gathered at the Baird Center for the entire weekend to dance, to share their love of square dancing. And I just think it's amazing the different types of people that we bring into the city and how quickly they fall in love with the city. I was able to talk with a lot of them. They, like I said, this is a big deal. This convention years ago used to be 30,000 people. It's shrunk over the years, but just getting a perspective from someone who had never been here before, and they have talked about it for the last 3 years since they named Milwaukee, was my something new and surprising.
We were not only pitched to cover it, but also we had some folks show up to drop off, square dancing paraphernalia. They were very excited, so I'm glad it was a good time for them.
It was.
Mordecai?
Well, sometimes as a professor of political science, I get phone calls from the media. Would you comment on this thing that's happening, on that thing that's happening? So every couple of weeks, sometimes I'd get a phone call. In the last couple of weeks, it's really started accelerating. And as a professor of political science, I would have a graduate seminar of a dozen kids. I'd be speaking to a lecture hall of maybe 100 undergraduates. To me, when I'm on the radio, when I'm on TV, when I'm interviewed by a print reporter, I'm talking to a classroom of 1,000 students, 10,000 students.
Or more, exactly.
Now, this is just priceless in terms of educating Milwaukeeans and Wisconsinites about democracy and the governmental system. This is an incredible one-time opportunity, and that I'm sure UWM is going to be starring in many of these venues to be able to give good, educated commentary about the convention.
That's great. Thank you. Mark?
And I'm going to play off both those comments when you think about the role that this city and this opportunity presents and how we're on a global stage. And we've got this incredible opportunity, and I love to see Wisconsin elected officials coming together in a bipartisan manner to support democracy. And we're seeing explicit activities. It's in the newspaper today. And these are the types of things that I think if the convention weren't here, we'd be another state and that would be happening. But we're able to showcase that for a lot of individuals. And let's make sure we stick with that. That's so important to the future of our country. I think, as Peggy, you talked about earlier, and we know the way people view politics from one side or the other, it shouldn't matter. We have to get back to that era where we can talk through issues and we can learn from each other. We're respectful, we engage, and that's what I love to see. So when you ask about what am I inspired about, what have I seen, what have I heard, that to me is very, very, very important for the future of our country, and I'm really proud of that.
Well, as our time here draws to a close, I just will reflect back that the themes I heard today were about welcoming new visitors, welcoming new people to our city, engaging with them in a welcoming and hospitable way, and also educating our community about the things that are important to our civil society. And I got to tell you, that inspires me every day, and so do the three of you. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been the UWM Chancellor's Report here on 89.7 WUWM.
You've been listening to The Chancellor's Report, featuring Mark Monet, Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. If you'd like more information, go to uwm.edu/chancellor.